Hello everybody, X-Star here, welcome back to another World of Warcraft video, and today we're going to be going over the class changes which are coming to us in Shadowlands, starting with the pre-patch of course. So in this one we'll be going over Death Knights, starting off with the general changes overall for the whole class. Then we'll be going over Frost, Unholy and of course Blood. Times for when each of those will be starting will be showing on screen now. If you want to skip to that particular video or want to watch the whole thing, that is much appreciated. Okay, so let's get into the general changes for Death Knights in Shadowlands. Okay, so now we'll start with the general changes which will affect all the different specs for Death Knights. So starting off, Rune Strike is no longer a Blood Death Knight talent and has been redesigned to be a Rune Spender and Runic Power generating ability used while leveling up your Death Knight. Rune Strike will be replaced with either Festering Strike, Heart Strike or Howling Strike, depending on which specification you choose. Of course that being Blood, Unholy or Frost. So next, slight balancing change here. When swapping weapons, the off-balance debuff is applied and prevents the Death Knight from gaining any bonuses from Rune Forging for 30 seconds. That's because there has been a lot of different changes to Rune Forging, a lot of new runes which you can put on. So we'll go over them in a little bit as well, and you'll see what we are now able to do. So going on to the ability changes, Death Coil is now available to all classes of Death Knights and not just Unholy. This is basically a standard attack that does shadow damage or heals your undead ally, which we'll get to of course shortly as well. Death and Decay, which was, I believe, for Blood Death Knights, from my memory, because I do main Death Knight. This puts a corruption around the ground which causes damage over time shadow effect in an area. We have Raise Undead, which will give you a little ghoul to fight with you. This was just for undead, I believe, and it's now available for everybody. So we then have Chains of Ice. This was a Frost Death Knight only, I believe, which could use to reduce movement speed by 70% for 8 seconds. Very useful ability to have. We have a Lichborn, which is drawn upon unholy energy to become undead for 10 seconds, increasing Leech by 10% and making you immune to Charm, Fear and Sleep, which sounds like could have been an unholy ability before. Awesome. Anti-Magic Zone, this is a really useful ability. Places an anti-magic zone for 10 seconds, which reduces all spell damage taken by party and raid members by 20%. That's of course them standing in the zone. So we have a lot of new runes which are being added, which you can put on to your blades. So we have Rune of Sanguination, which is your Death Strike deals increased damage based on the target's missing health. And when you fall below 35%, you heal 50% of your maximum health over 6 seconds. Pretty good. Rune of Spell Warding deflects 3% of all spell damage and creates a shield to absorb magical damage for equal to 10% of your health. And when an enemy damages a shield, their cast speed is reduced by 10% as well. So getting some really good runes. Really going for making rune forging a thing again, because it wasn't too useful before, so they needed something doing. Rune of Hysteria increases your maximum runic power, which is really useful. And your attacks have a chance to increase your runic generation by 20% for 8 seconds. Again, very useful. And Rune of Unending Thirst, which is when you kill an enemy that yields experience or honour, you gain 5% half-stern movement speed and heals you with 5% of your maximum health. Additionally increases your movement speed while dead fight 10%. Doing a lot of general healing around different Death Knights, because before Blood Death Knight was like all healing. And the only other ones that the ones had, I believe, one ability for each. Now it seems that all Death Knights have been the ability to heal really good, which is of course very useful. So Rune of the Apocalypse, which is designed if you use a ghoul a lot, depending on what, of course, you use. So your ghoul attacks have a chance to apply one of the additional effects. Famine reduces damage dealt to yourself. Death, which reduces healing done. Pestilence, which slows the target and deals damage over time, or War, which increases damage taken from the Death Knight in general. And PvP change, Lichborn has been completely removed, so you can't use this anymore in PvP. Okay, so that is all the general changes. Let's move on to Blood. Now we have Blood Death Knight changes. So Rune Tap is no longer a talent and will be learned by all Blood Death Knights at level 19. Additionally, Rune Tap now has 2 charges and the global cooldown has been removed, meaning you can use it as fast as you can, obviously, depending on when charges come back. So a new talent, which of course will be replacing Rune Tap, is Relish in Blood, which is while your Crimson Scourge is inactive, the next Death and Decay heals you per Bone Shield charge and immediately gains you 10 runic power, which is pretty good. Another new talent is Death Pact. Create a death pact that heals you 50% of your maximum health, but does absorb 30% of your maximum health in a healing for the next 15 seconds. It gives you a little bad bubble, but if you're on your own, that's pretty good. Mark of Blood has its runic power cost reduced, and it's in healing increased to 3%. It was 2. Rapid Decomposition now has an additional effect. Your Blood Plague leeches 50% more health for you. Again, very useful. Anti-Magical Barrier. Oh, wait, I lost it. So, wrote it down. Barrier now reduces the cooldown of Anti-Magic Shell by 20%. This is the one that gives you the single one, not the big group reduction. Was 50 seconds and increases its overall duration and the amount absorbed by 40%. Very useful, of course, for doing solo content and, of course, PvP. Voracious, I probably said that wrong. Now grants you 15% leech for 8 seconds. Leech is always useful, gives more healing. As an additional effect, Death Strike's healing is done by 20%. That's the one that I believe, before the pre-patch, that is the Frost Death Knight's only way of healing is using that attack. So that's good to see that getting a bit of a buff. Red First now reduces the cooldown of Vampiric Blood by 1.5 seconds per 10 runic power spent. Which again, pretty good. It's basically like Soul Leech for Warlocks, so it just drains them a bit and you heal. Consumption and Bone Storm now capped to 8 targets, so it can't hit more than 8 anymore. Ossuary has been removed completely. Will be removed and will be learned by all Blood Death Knights in Shadowlands. That kind of contradicts itself. I don't know if it's just me. Has been removed and will be learned by everybody. Okay, so PvP changes for Blood. New PvP talent that we have is Rot and Wither, which will make your Death and Decay rot enemies each time it deals damage to them, absorbing a healing equal to 100% of your damage dealt. Insane. And Holy Command has been completely removed. We can't use it anymore. Okay, that's it for Blood, so let's get on to Frost, my class. Okay, so now moving on to Frost. Of course, my class that I will be maining in Shadowlands, as I love Frost Death Knight. So here we go. So Obliterate, Frost Strike, Frost Scythe, and Glacial Advance can now be used with 200 weapons. Again, very useful for getting that extra bit of DPS. A new passive ability has been given to all Frost Death Knights, which is called Might of the Frozen Wastes, which you'll be able to rank up, of course. While dual wielding your Obliterate and Frost Strike will also strike with your offhand, and you can engrave each weapon with a Runeforge enchant. That is really good, so you can have 2 different Runeforges on your weapons, so you'll be able to combine the 2 which I previously mentioned, giving for some insane combinations. And rank 2, which you'll be able to get while leveling up, where it increases your Obliterate damage by 35% and your Killing Machine proc trance while using a 2-handed weapon. Yeah. Frostwolf's Fury is no longer a talent and will be learned by all Frost Death Knights at 44. That's good, freeing up a bit of space for extra abilities. Empower Rune Weapon and Pillar of Frost no longer have a global cooldown. That is pretty good, because I mean they didn't really need one anyway, because they had a 60-second I think recharge on them. Howling Blast and Breath of Sindragosa now deal reduced damage. Yep, I get that. On secondary targets, yeah. Because when you currently use it, if you use the other of them, it just wipes the group. Especially if you're doing other content. So, I can understand that change. And of course, when you're doing bosses in large groups and dungeons, yeah, it can be a bit overpowered. So, that one is fair enough. New talents that we have coming is here. Oh god. Hyperthermic Presence. Embrace the ice in your veins, reducing the runic power cost of all your abilities by 35% per 8 seconds. Very good. Runic Iteration proc rate has been adjusted to bring dual-wielding and two-handed weapons closer together, and the runic power gained has been increased to 5. Blinding Sleep now has an additional effect. When Blinding Sleep ends, enemies are slowed by 50% for 6 seconds, so another slow for Frost Death Knights. I think they're trying to get up close to where Frost Mages, a lot of slowing abilities. Ice Cap now reduces the remaining cooldown of Pillar of Frost by 4 seconds. That's pretty cool. And Frost Scythe is now called at 5 targets. Again, it was slightly OP because you could hit literally everything in the room. Okay, so that's it for Frost. Let's move on to Unholy. And finally, Unholy Death Knights. So here we go. Mastery. Dreadblade now also increases your damage of your minions, which is really useful. Epidemic is no longer a talent and will be learned by all Unholy Death Knights at 34. Again, freeing up an extra talent space, which is always nice. Additionally, Epidemic's range has been reduced to 40 yards instead of 100. 100 yards is an insane distance anyway. And will further cast if there are no enemies afflicted with Virulent Plague. Sudden Doom now causes your auto attacks to have a chance to make your next Death Coil or Epidemic cost no runic power, which is very useful, of course, for the rotation. Scourge Strike now prefers targets with festering wounds while inside Death and Decay. Very useful, of course, combining all those different effects to produce the best damage overall. Outbreak duration of Violent Plague increased to 28 seconds and 21, making the course last longer to get that burst of damage. I can't say this one. Virulent Plague no longer has a 30% chance to infect enemies. Affected enemies to erupt to nearby enemies each time it deals damage, and the area effect range has been increased to 10 yards from 8. Army of the Dead rune cost is reduced to 1 instead of 3. Scourge Strike and Culling Shadow is now capped at 5 targets, one inside Death and Decay, and both abilities will prefer targets infested with festering wounds. Again, a lot around balancing the Death and Decay drop with this one, so you can't basically just put everybody in there and shank them. The following talents have been adjusted. We have some new talents and a lot of changes, of course. So the new talent will be Unholy Pact. With Dark Transformation, it creates an Unholy Pact between you and your pet, igniting flame chains that deal shadow damage over 15 seconds to enemies between you and your pet. Very useful if your pet is off, say killing somewhere else, and you are back taking the main of the bunch. And while active, your strength is increased by 5%. Again, always nice to get a bit of a buff. Unholy Blight's disease now stacks up to 4 times, and as an additional effect, your minions deal 3% increased damage per stack to enemies affected by Unholy Blight. And additionally, it applies Virulent Plague to enemies. Again, very useful. Soul Reaper has been reworked and now costs 1 rune and has a 6-second cooldown. Strike an enemy for shadow damage and inflict the enemy with Soul Reaper. After 5 seconds, if the target is below 35% health, they will explode, dealing additional damage to surrounding targets and themselves. And if the target was to die while afflicted, you gain Runic Corruption. Defile now has an additional effect, which is if any enemies are standing in the defile, it grows in size and deals increasing damage over time. Very useful again. Army of the Dead now has an additional attack ability, which is Apocalypse, and Army of the Dead summon a Magus of the Undead for 15 seconds, who hurls Frost Bolts and Shadow Bolts at your target. Wow. So not only do you summon the little ghouls, you also summon mages. That is really powerful. Unholy Frenzy has now been reworked and renamed to Holy Assault. Unholy Assault, sorry. Strike your target with an Unholy Blow, dealing shadow damage and inflicting the target with 4 festering wounds, and sending you into a killing frenzy, increasing your Hasta by 20% for 12 seconds. And just to finish off, Bursting Swords have now been capped at 8 targets, so they can't hit everybody in the group again. Okay, so that is all of the changes coming to the Death Knight class. A lot of balances seem to be around the Death and Decay, which is of course becoming a drop for all of them, and just a lot of general balances around that. Changes to a couple of abilities and some damage reduction for example, the Howling Blast and Breath of Sidrigosa, which is really understandable, and there seems to be a lot of reduction to the amount of area effects can do as well, so you can't just hit everything in the group. Is now limited as well. Okay, so if you found this video useful, don't forget to punch the like button, leave a comment down below, or subscribe if you're new to the channel, for mail and Twitter link down below as always. And last to say, thank you so much for watching. I've been XStarKillerX, and I shall see you in the next World of Warcraft video. Thanks for watching.